Avoidants tend to have fairly predictable relationship histories, especially by the time they reach their 30s, 40s, 50s, or older. If this person is not working on themselves, if they're not working to become more secure and healthy in a relationship, their relationship history is pretty predictable. In most cases, their long-term relationships are going to be with emotionally unavailable partners, but their short-term relationships are with emotionally available partners. And there are reasons for this, and it can vary a little bit depending on whether you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant. Let's get into dismissive avoidance first. So with dismissive avoidance, they will push away fairly quickly most emotionally available partners. That's because emotional intimacy is one of their core triggers. Expectations, disagreements, normal relationship things are quite triggering to a dismissive avoidant. This is a person that experienced consistent childhood emotional neglect. They were not given the love and the nurturing in the way that they needed. Their feelings were routinely dismissed. They personalized that neglect. They grew up to feel like they must be unlovable, that they are defective, that there's something wrong with them. Their parents or caretakers had high expectations on them and only gave them love and affection based on achievement. So what they learn is that even the bare minimum expectations in the relationship are insurmountable. It's inevitable that they're going to disappoint their partner. Also, if they lower their walls, their partner will figure out that they are unlovable and defective and reject and abandon them. So being vulnerable, being emotionally available feels unsafe for the dismissive avoidant. So initially, they will be attracted to a person that is emotionally available because at some level deep down, they long for that. But when they get it, it triggers them. They feel the sudden urge to run away and they push this person away. So shorter term relationships tend to be with emotionally available partners. However, when another dismissive avoidant comes along, or perhaps even a narcissist, this person will not trigger the fears of a dismissive avoidant. That's because both partners are walled off. There is no threat of emotional intimacy in that relationship. So there's no need to be vulnerable. That person is not vulnerable with them, and they don't have to be vulnerable in return. There's little to no expectations in a relationship like that. There's a lack of communication, so it feels safe. They don't feel like they have to be exposed in that relationship. And those relationships can go on for quite some time. But they do usually fail. And the reason they fail is because it's unfulfilling. And the dismissive avoidant will leave the relationship wanting something more meaningful, wanting a deeper connection, and then they go and find it with an emotionally available partner, but then their fears get triggered and they push this person away. And the cycle continues. Emotionally available, short term. Emotionally unavailable, long term. And if the dismissive avoidant is not working on themselves, they won't even know why they feel the sudden urge to push away good partners, and they won't know why they feel safe to commit to unhealthy, emotionally unavailable partners. They just blindly follow what their urges and instincts are, which is unfortunately maladaptive. All right, well, let's get into fearful avoidance. Okay, so fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidants tend to follow a similar pattern to their dismissive avoidant counterpart. Shorter term relationships with emotionally available partners and longer term relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. However, in the case of a fearful avoidant, their shorter term relationships with emotionally available partners tend to last just a little bit longer than the dismissive avoidant. But there are slightly different reasons as to why the fearful avoidant will run from the emotionally available partner. The fearful avoidant, well, they also experience that consistent childhood emotional neglect. But in addition to that neglect, they often experienced chaos, volatility, perhaps even trauma and abuse. So they grew up to develop an anxious attachment as well as an avoidant attachment. So in a relationship with somebody who is emotionally available, the avoidant attachment is more likely to get triggered by that emotional availability and the emotional intimacy that's building. So that can cause similar fears to a dismissive avoidant. But there's something that a fearful avoidant also experiences, which is unique to them, which is hypervigilance. Fearful avoidants have a deep trust issue. And this goes back to their childhood when their parents or caretakers betrayed their trust. So the deep fear of the fearful avoidant is that if they commit, if they're in a relationship, it's inevitable that their partner is going to betray their trust. So they start looking for inconsistencies in their partner to justify these fears, to validate themselves, to say, look, betrayal is imminent. The fearful avoidant grew up in a more toxic, unhealthy environment, and there's a comfort in familiarity. So when they have a consistent, loving, emotionally available partner, it'll feel uncomfortable, different, because it's not familiar. The fearful avoidant will be naturally distrusting of this emotionally available partner, wondering, why are they being so nice? There's no way that this is genuine. They must be trying to manipulate me. And they will look for excuses to justify their fears so they can push this person away. There's also a lack of communication involved about these fears, which can build up into resentment. And ultimately, the relationship reaches a breaking point. The fearful avoidant has been hypervigilant, fault-finding, and they get to the point of resentment and they shut down and they push away the emotionally available partner, because at that point they are in full dismissive avoidant mode. But now on the flip side, when the fearful avoidant meets a partner that is emotionally unavailable, whether it's a dismissive avoidant or a narcissist, and fearful avoidants are very prone to getting in relationships with narcissists, they will commit to that person and are much more likely to stay with that person long term. The emotionally unavailable partner will trigger the fearful avoidant's anxious side, and the fearful avoidant will be trying to earn the love from the emotionally unavailable person, trying to prove to them that they are in fact lovable. The fearful avoidant will be playing out their childhood. They likely also had a parent that was toxic or narcissistic, emotionally unavailable. And the subconscious mind likes to resolve childhood issues because if they're able to earn the love from the narcissistic person, well, it resolves their lack of love they received from their narcissistic parent. Plus, the toxicity, the emotional unavailability is familiar to the fearful avoidant. They grew up with it. There's a comfort in familiarity, so it feels safe, it feels normal. And it's easier to stay in this relationship, even though it's toxic, because it is familiar. And there's less hypervigilance because this person is showing them that they're not safe, but the fearful avoidant is triggered in the anxious side, not the avoidant side, constantly trying to earn the love from this person. Also, early on, fearful avoidants often have the butterflies that they get for the toxic partner. What it really is their nervous system warning them that this person's not safe, but since it's familiar to them, the fearful avoidant will confuse that anxiety in their nervous system for butterflies, thinking there is a spark with the narcissistic or toxic person. But when they meet a person that is emotionally available, there won't be that anxiety, so they think there's a lack of spark, a lack of chemistry, a lack of butterflies. But in reality, it's just their nervous system telling them that this person's safe. But that can cause the fearful avoidant to think that this person is boring and push them away quite quickly. But in the end, when it comes to avoidance, whether it is fearful or dismissive, short-term relationships with emotionally available partners, long-term relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. And that cycle will continue until the avoidant self-reflects and does the work. That should include therapy with a licensed psychotherapy and a commitment to a change in behavior. Repeating a new behavior when triggered is how you reprogram the emotional mind, because the human mind learns in repetition. The more you repeat something, the more automatic it becomes. They can do it, but they have to want it. They can break the cycle, and only they can.